It's around 3 to 4 hours on, 4 hours.
Just so that.
If you don't mind the winter, it's complex. But the winter is long. Someone said that Cornell, the academic year was 2 seasons, August and winter.
All right, testing the mic. Folks at home, can you hear us?
Loud and clear. I'll have video
Loud
on
and
in a
clear.
bit. We're just doing the good night routine here.
All right, Sandy, you may begin whenever you want.
Okay, welcome to the April 17th, 2024 meeting of the Executive Committee. My name is Sandy McKee and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. This meeting is called to order at 6:30 p.m. You know the New York State law, so I'm not going to repeat that. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through Q&A featuring Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there's time, we will acknowledge your questions after the committee's discussion. Ripple is taking the minutes tonight, yes. Okay, we'll now take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct roll call.
All right, committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Majed Abdul Samad.
Present.
Thank you. Kyle Thyde. I don't see him. We'll move on. Neil Barclay. Present. Elby Barroso.
Present.
Thank you. Claire Brennan. Don't see her. John DeRico.
Present.
Thank you. E. Bisman.
Present.
Thank you. Jason Fromowitz.
Present.
Thank you. Rupal Kattad.
Present.
Thank you. John Keller.
Present.
Thank you. Nadeem Talani cannot join us. Sandy McKee.
Present.
Thank you. Richard Mintz.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts cannot join us, but in his stead, we have Stu Desser, the vice chair of the committee.
Present.
Thank you. Livia Shrednick.
Present.
Thank you. Mark Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. Gabe Turzo, I believe, is delayed.
Right.
He's not here right now, but with 13 of 17 members present, we comfortably have quorum.
Okay. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time and is reflected on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted. The minutes from the March 20th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Are there any objections? Okay, great. The minutes of the March 20th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. So rules, I think we all know them by now. Don't speak until you're granted the floor. You can raise your hand if you have a question. You will be identified. Those on Zoom, raise your hand through Zoom. It's very important that only one person speak at a time so that there's a clear recording for those watching at home. And please don't use the chat function. Okay. Tonight's agenda. We're starting off by discussing changing the names of some of the committees. And mostly this is so that whoever from the community is interested in that particular topic can find out which committee it's being addressed by. So we had Parks and Environment, Environment and Parks to Parks, Landmarks and Cultural Affairs, Health and Human Services to Health and Environment Committee. And I've been talking to Stu about changing the public safety as well. So we had a little bit, I brought Stu's missive, but one of the things we talked about, it could be social justice. Other boards have a social justice committee, or it could be sanitation. So public safety and sanitation, because they're Stu, you have a better analysis of this than I did. Do you want to say why it might be a good idea for,
I do.
well.
I mean, it's sanitation doesn't seem to fit in exactly, but if we're talking about municipal services, it makes good sense, because then you have police, fire, and sanitation. So it depends if we want to organize more by the relationships that different committees have, I think, with the departments, or if we want to go more by subject matter. By subject matter, sanitation doesn't seem to fit in the same way as, you know, as public safety or social justice,
Mm.
really. But, you know, it doesn't, I don't know that it fits in any place else either. It might fit in with parks because it's an environmental question.
We have sanitation now, and, it's fine with parks.
I was just thinking Parks has a really robust agenda, especially during the summer. During the winter, maybe it's not as, and there's, so, I mean, Parks also has landmarks.
So, I mean, yeah, but I know
I'm
sometimes.
glad to share, you know,
Well, and I think, you know, the basis here, it's not that we need to decide who, you know, which committee takes it, as long as the issue gets discussed.
I
Jason?
was also under the impression that transportation had purview over sanitation. I don't necessarily want to claim to it, but,
I mean, exactly. It doesn't really matter who takes on the issue as long as it gets
and
addressed.
that was, I think, part of the thought was just,
Discussion.
there's a default to one committee, and then where, if
Yeah.
the subject matter is appropriate someplace else, we just throw it over there.
Yeah, especially, I mean, I think right now there's a lot of sanitation issues because they're rolling out the new program and there's the rats are and all those things that, and my understanding, Jesus, is it's something that the community does care about. I mean, do you get comments regarding sanitation more than other issues? or-
Typically, the comments that we get that are sanitation related are things like, there's a lot of trash at this particular corner. Typically because a garbage receptacle is either missing or damaged, or we need another one. Things like that. Sometimes we will get complaints about trash being strewn over a vacant lot. And things like that.
Yeah, and especially right now composting, because it's also an issue that's come up. So if any committee wants to take on composting, I think that's a particularly pertinent issue right now.
Environmentally, right?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm thinking like, if I'm like just a person in the community, what would I think of it and where would I go? That
Right,
sounds right. And that's the key here.
right. So we're now saying that it's health and environment,
Mhm.
so and it actually is a health issue in a way.
Or
Yeah.
anything in the environment that affects health.
Yeah, like compost and rats. I think there's the plague, let's think of the plague. So, maybe that's a good, that's a good thing for your committee could take that on as it comes up. But any other thoughts on committee names or how we divide up some of the,
Are we gonna rename public safety to, I just didn't, I missed the point.
well, we may not,
Yeah, because
but,
public safety seems to be on people's mind, so I'm not sure. I was,
yeah,
For those who were at the mayor's forum, you know, I have an interest in sanitation. It's just that my particular interest was in CB5, which took the joy out of it for me, but.
yeah. And the mayor has not followed through, right?
Well, no, we're waiting for the council members' schedule to fit, so they're actually been okay so far.
Okay.
I'll whine when it's time.
Okay, so, I mean, maybe though we think of public safety, if there are any municipal issues that they go to public safety is kind of a broader.
You know, you can say public safety and sanitation. When I worked for a network, there was an executive position that was called executive accommodations and hazardous waste. I still have the brochure, so you can fit things together. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm not.
so maybe we'll call it that for now and we'll see what happens. If it's and so it's public safety and sanitation. And do we have any comments on these other renamings, just to help kind of guide the public to?
Just a clarifying question, health and human services, if we were to change the health and environment, the human services aspect is assumed that it stays under purview of this committee?
Yes, I guess so. We haven't had many health, human services issues.
What are human services?
Yeah, that actually is a good point.
Yeah.
Senior issues are considered human services, right?
Yes, seniors.
In the past, it's been
In the
under that,
past.
yeah.
Yeah. I had the same question.
Things like food insecurity would probably be, human services.
Yeah, I was thinking of like housing and homelessness, that would fall in a lot of them.
So I mean, that's sort of the purpose of this meeting is if an issue comes up, we just decide which committee takes it. So it doesn't need to be, we don't need to say, oh, this committee only deals with this, but if someone brings up a specific issue, we can assign it to.
Well, I do think it's helpful to have the names of the committee is fairly verbose, especially as like a new member of the board. It's like, I didn't know where where sanitation sat.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
it wasn't transportation. I mean, it gives people the opportunity to like freedom to bring things up that they might not realize that was in the purview of committees that they're on.
Yeah. All right. Well, public safety and sanitation. That's
Good.
yeah.
Just a question not related to public safety. So with housing, I think about this sometimes. Is there a reason why it says housing and homeless? I mean, like, what is the purpose of the homeless?
Rich, do you know the history?
I mean, I don't know the history because I think it was that way when I got here. But I think the
Yeah.
idea is that homelessness is a lack of housing and our advocacy for building housing supports people.
Yeah, it kind of was more of the, First Avenue, and then we had, 'cause when that name happened, homelessness wasn't that big of an issue for us. It was the shelter, and then it was any housing that had affordable housing, and that was sort of where it rolled into.
I mean, certainly our committee members are comfortable with the two things being together. I think of them as.
Yeah. I mean, I could just be housing because
That's what I think. I mean, housing would encompass
homelessness.
those
Yeah.
individuals. Yeah.
And maybe it's less like, oh, I'm homeless, I have to announce it.
Well, and exactly, that's why I bring it up, because I know with youth and education, with John and I, when we work with children, migrant children, just children in general at PS 116, we always said transitional housing, because I think children in those situations, they already have enough difficulties
Yeah.
that we don't need to label them. And I think individuals in general, I'm not a fan of the word, but I'm not,
Yeah.
pushing it in on everyone. Like you said, it's kind of
Yeah, it has a kind of
been
negative
tough. It's,
image.
I mean, I don't have a strong objection to dropping the word homelessness. I
Yeah.
think it's good to have a committee with homelessness in the name because it helps us have visibility on the issue. But if other people's consensus is that it's a distraction, I mean, it won't change the issues that we have.
Exactly, yeah. I remember Corinne didn't want to have it. in-
Oh, she didn't? Oh.
No, she felt the same, I think a little bit similar, yeah. Oh, sorry, B, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a supporter of keeping homelessness there because homelessness is more than housing. And you get into supportive housing, which is a little different. And or you also get into mental issues, which isn't exactly health, but what services are provided. I think it's important, given what New York City is doing now with housing and the asylum seekers and everything, to keep homelessness.
Didn't we, I feel like it was housing, homeless, and was it human rights was the third thing in that committee?
It was at one point in time, yes.
yeah.
Maybe adding that back makes the homelessness a little less, pejorative, I don't know, but.
I mean, I don't think of it as pejorative personally.
Yeah.
Like, we are dealing with an issue
Issue,
that does
yes.
face the city
Yeah.
and people in it.
Yeah.
And I think given the fact that we have so many services in our district for people who are homeless, it's good to present ourselves as aware of
Mhm.
their existence.
Do you want to do a show of hands? Who wants to change?
I think we should keep the homelessness there, because again, we can't just shove it under the rug. We can't just shy away from this issue. We need to be aware of it, and we need to know how or what we can do to help them.
Sounds like we keep it. That's the consensus I'm getting, okay. And,
B has convinced me.
yes, B, thank you. And the other names, I mean, landmarks, cultural affairs for parks. Again, just people didn't know where landmarks was for whatever reason, and it's always been part of parks. And I think you've been, you addressed them, but it just
And
wasn't,
that's the old title of it anyway.
Yeah.
It always was.
yeah. And then health and environment. Okay. Sounds good to me if we're all set. Any objections to those revisions?
So just to be clear, because you guys aren't voting on this necessarily, so it needs to be documented somewhere. This committee has changed the name, or rather, the chair has presented it to the committee for their consultation. And the name of Public Safety Committee is now Public Safety and Sanitation Committee. The Parks Committee is now what it was before, Parks, Landmarks, and Cultural Affairs. And the Health and Human Services Committee is now dubbed the Health and Environment Committee.
Perfect. Okay. Chair's report. Unless there's any other issues, okay. I met with NYU Langone, two women from NYU Langone today. They had no knowledge of the parking, on the waterfront, but they promised they would investigate. They were surprised about the issue, so. And when they came to us for the request for funding, they said they had only 1 month to do it. They had lost a week, and so they apologized for not being more, forthright. And they said there is another funding request coming up, but they tend to be only 1 month. So I asked that they please just let us know ahead of time. They offered that their emergency room doctors could come to talk about the conditions that they're seeing. So they said maybe to the Housing and Homelessness Committee, because apparently there's, it's changed quite a bit with, I guess because our community's changed, so.
I mean, what conditions?
Yeah, more homeless people, I believe, is what the condition.
Coming into the.
Coming into the ER.
Okay.
And they said that they could do it on a regular basis or once or twice, and, it just might be good to get an update.
Yeah, I would have that.
Okay. And they offered to team with us on a health fair, but they said they had a very successful health fair that was outside in Brooklyn. And that they couldn't do all of it, but they'd be willing to team with us to help us put together something. So it's worth, looking at. They're trying to be more proactive in the program. And the Innovation East project on First Avenue may have its scoping meeting in June, which is not great because we don't have, we're off for the summer. So
Is that the project that's just north of Spark? What
it's
is?
right across the street. Yeah.
Oh, okay, the one where the
441 first.
4041
Yeah.
First, yeah.
the building we wanted for housing.
Yes, and I mentioned that we are still advocating for housing because it's a city-owned site.
Yeah.
But they're a little different because they do have a developer on board. So anyway, they did say they'd try and get back to us as soon as possible. And we agreed to have meetings on a more regular basis. So
What's that project? Spark for
it's more labs.
with NYU.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're the client or the user for it. We've had some comments on the transgender sports issue. Apparently, some people in the community are interested in it, and we're wondering if that could be assigned to a specific committee to get some more information on it, see what's happening. I'm not sure it's just an education issue. It's potential public safety in a way. So, yeah, human rights.
What's the issue with that?
Mark, you may know.
CEC 2, which is the Community Education Council, passed a resolution. I'm not sure what the, disapproving, or I'm not sure, like not supporting trans youth playing in sports, school sports. And it's caused a huge uproar for a variety of reasons. And the city council members and the borough president are quite interested in.
Sounds like youth and education to me.
That's them playing in their schools.
Yeah,
And
and there's a meeting
yeah.
on it tonight, but I'm not sure where.
John, are you familiar with the issue? Has it come up?
Yeah, I am familiar. It's a very, very tricky issue. I very much support the kids, specifically the trans kids. I did not agree with the decision that came out in the very close vote in District 2. I totally get the elected pressure, especially around primary season. I mean, it's tricky. It's going to be like a shit show issue for sure, as it is nationally, as it is on the state level. I have some reservations for that reason for wading in, because I'm not sure what good we can do, but if there's concrete good we can do, and even if a resolution in support of their inclusion, which I would personally be in favor of, although I'm not sure the committee's position, the board's position, the neighborhood's position, I only know that it's not it's not going to be those issues where there's like 95% agreement. I would be happy to do something. I have like a very distinct viewpoint that I'm not sure people will necessarily share, but I see kids being harmed by this decision, and I don't want them to be harmed.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone would see it that way, just to be clear, and they're entitled to their viewpoint.
Right. I mean, I think we would want someone to come in and speak to the issue. It's not just our opinions. We want someone
Clarity.
for clarity to make ssure we have a, multi sides.
Yeah. I mean, we know how this, we know how this goes. You can get a speaker for either side. It's such a tricky.
Both, maybe one month and one the other.
Hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah. B has her hand up, and she's had many solutions, so let's ask her.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't follow the procedure there.
I don't have many solutions, but I think it is a significant issue. And I think you'd be surprised how much support there really exists to include the children in the programs and in sports. So I think, Sandy, your idea of doing it, having speakers on both sides, and I think it will always help when we get a sense of the community, because if you put that on the agenda, you will hear what the community thinks about it. And I would be very surprised if it wasn't supported by a large number of our community.
Okay. So, I mean, John, is it a youth and education? There's no youth and education meeting this month.
We want to do
a smaller group, a task force, maybe.
Is it?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, next school term,
Yeah.
it's a matter of whether those children will be able to play or, so it is kind of timely, I think. Yeah.
Could we do because our meeting got canceled because there was an issue first 2 nights over, and then there wasn't enough time to reschedule a new date in April, is my recollection.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could do like a joint meeting with like the health committee. I'm sorry, we were just talking about the names and now I'm drawing a complete blank on the names.
Health and environment.
Thank you. Geez, sorry, that's embarrassing. Just so we could get something on the calendar that we could vote on at the next full board meeting.
Well, and it may be more than 1 month's discussion is my guess.
Oh yeah, you're right, because we'll need one for each speaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also my point, is like, if we're doing more than one committee meeting on this and then to another full board, will we make it before our summer break?
Well, that's what we're trying to sort out. We're trying to do it before summer break.
It's like with a complex issue like this, like, I don't, like, do you want to rush into a decision to make it to the June meeting, which would be our last full board meeting to do that?
Well, I think it's better to have a position, even if it's, I agree.
Would it be possible to have both guest speakers in one meeting?
We could do that, it's hard, it's a little hard to organize, you know, it would be May meeting probably, but potentially.
I just think it's like much more complicated than we're giving it credit for, because I think, like, as John was alluding to, I think there are a lot of people who are very much in support of this, but I think there's a lot of people who are not in support of it for many different reasons that I don't think it would be a prudent thing to do to kind of rush it through. I think that might do more harm to the community board.
Well, we have a meeting in May and we can make sure that people are able to attend.
It's advice, but, you know,
Yeah,
up to you.
Jason,
What's the scope of the board, what's the board, would we be duplicating the efforts of the representation that the whatever, yeah, who do they cover, like exactly what's there?
my understanding is it's a much bigger group, we're a small portion of
Okay, that was.
the area that they represent. So.
Yeah, when I was on
John-
it, so it was, and then that meeting was fiery. I
Mhm.
mean, I attended it virtually, half of it, and it was really fiery. John is quite right. It's a hot button issue where you're gonna get intense reactions on both sides. So I know there's a value in taking a position, which I acknowledge. But on the other hand, I think being very thoughtful about it is not a bad thing. So I would tend to support, you know, having a couple of meetings on it where it's discussed, because it's just, in fact, I'm looking at the agenda tonight. CEC meets at this time. And it's not on the agenda, but I'm sure it will come up again, because that meeting was, to put it politely, volatile. I mean, it
So
was-
we plan to do something in September. We have May and June.
Is that too late though? That's the
Yeah, that's
question.
my
Yeah.
thing, because as you
And I'm
mentioned
open to
earlier,
that.
because they're gonna be affected by it come next school year.
Yeah.
So that might be too late for the kids that are gonna be harmed by this decision.
I can go either way. I think it's an issue that is serious enough that, you know, a lot of care and thought going into it is not a bad one, whereas having two meetings devoted to talking about it. On the other hand, if we feel that the board taking a direct stand on it before the next school year is valuable, then that would outweigh that, and I'm open either way.
We could also, and I don't know, can we piggyback on something that CEC or the board does? Are they having a forum on this? I don't know what's happening tonight.
No, they're just having a normal meeting tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether they're having, but, those, yeah, you could, I could.
I don't want a
happy to
meeting
reach
like
out.
that.
Yeah, I would be happy to
Do we
reach
actually
out.
know the time, because like I'm not familiar with like how, if this is for competitive high school sports. The governing body over that, like, would they be even able to make that change in this timeline before next year? Like, that seems very quick, like any
What do we
athletic
do?
governing body that I know like usually takes, it would be like for 2025, not for 2024. Is like, do we know what that timeline is? I'm just curious about that.
I'm not sure we do.
We should find out then. Let's.
So there's a borough board meeting tomorrow. I'll bring it up at the borough board and see what other boards are doing. But it probably is something they're trying to move on. So
Have any boards taken a position on this?
5 is doing something. They voted,
What have they
Oh,
done?
tonight.
they're voting against it, right? Or they voted against it, I think.
Voting against.
John, do you remember, did Board 5 vote against CEC too, or they were?
I'm furiously Googling, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
And was there the timeline also, if you can Google that one too, John, that's why you're.
So at the very least, if let's say we can't come up with any consensus, can we at least vote on us or where we stand on this issue of trans youth being banned? Like, can we just, as a committee or as a board, can we vote on saying that we are either for it or against it? Can we at least take a stand before the next school year starts?
And I mean, we can, but it would be much better if we have the input of our community. And B, you have your interest? Oh,
You came up with a suggestion, Sandy, which I think at the service cabinet, if you see what other boards are thinking of, it might not be a bad idea for us to join with another board. And for example, community board, that's 59th Street up. We would have similar issues. There's a lot of schools in that area, as well as us. So maybe in hearing the speakers and stuff, we can join and put a joint meeting together, which would give us a broader scope.
Okay, well, I mean, it's tomorrow morning, so I can report back and, we may do it through email, but if it seems that we have the opportunity to do it, we may try and do it at one of the May meetings.
They may also, I'm thinking like BF, like 8, 5, 4, and us come together and maybe somebody to put on a forum or something, I don't know. But, in the meantime, that would help us too. We'd have at least one venue where we could all go and hear these things, and then come back. That way,
Okay, so we're,
sort of see what happens tomorrow morning.
yeah, Joseph?
Must we have speakers, 2 speakers? I sort of doubt a lot of people's opinions are going to be changed either way, and like when we do controversial transportation related things, we don't have both sides of the party come to.
Well, MTA came, which made a huge difference for our last controversial, transportation.
Yeah, but like to that point, we didn't have like I don't know who's fighting congestion pricing, but
Yeah.
people are fighting, some organization on the other side of that
Yeah.
isn't there to also present their case.
Which probably would have helped, but, so if it can't be done, it can't be done, but I think we should try
Let's
and
look into it.
okay, yeah.
Because then it might turn out where it's not till next year, so we don't really need to do it. right
Yeah,
now.
if we know the
Like,
timeline.
with this particular issue, like, it's much more politicized, than a lot of others, like a transportation issue. There will be people who think a certain way on this issue, but don't necessarily want to say things publicly because of the social
Yeah.
ramifications of putting their, true opinion out on this, so to rush through something like this, which is how it would, at least to me, seems like, I don't think would be the prudent thing, because then I think it puts a target on the community boards back on something that we don't really have a jurisdiction over, but we would be sort of like, more like sentimental community support. And I feel like we'd have a lot of abstentions in a vote like this on a full board, or maybe even in committee, just because people would feel a little uneasy to say one thing or another, especially when there are a lot of intense arguments on both sides of this.
I might say I would disagree because our votes are actually pretty private. I mean, they are open to the public after they're
Yeah.
made, but I'm not sure how many people actually, we do it on Zoom, so.
I mean, it's in every minutes, right? It's like you can see how someone voted on, so I'm just saying, I feel like a lot.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can. There you go.
Yeah, you can.
How each individual voted?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every.
At the end of every single minute.
Okay, I don't read the minutes. I never
We
get
don't,
that
we don't do
far.
it, we don't do it for, we don't do it for our board elections, because it's more of a courtesy thing for
Yeah.
ourselves, but for an issue like this, like, I feel like there would be a lot of nuance
Yeah.
that we need to be aware of.
So why don't we see what tomorrow morning brings, and see if we can get a bigger thing together, then we can draw
Yeah.
from that for
Okay,
us, rather than
right.
recreating the wheel.
And if you're looking for 2 opinions, you could have 2 people from the CEC comment, they could.
I think we want to take it out of the seats. Yeah.
No, it was
John. And
Oh, John,
I do have a few things I just want to raise. I'm a little hung up on the 2 speakers, although I get the equitable component of it. In some ways, it seems like a little, I don't know if pandering is the right word, and I don't think that was at all the intent in the suggestion. But it's like this, there's just something, I mean, to choose another issue, like abortion or gun rights, like, all right, we're going to have our pro-abortion and our anti-abortion person come, and it's like, honestly, a lot of the reason why I hate politics, because it feels like performative and like, what are we actually talking about? Is there really going to be substance? Are people going to be free to exchange ideas in this? You're not going to convince any minds. People are going to go in with their preconceived notions. They're going to act on those notions. So it seems like a little, a little unsatisfying. But that being said, like, what's the alternative? Like, you present one, then you're kind of come off as biased. So I just want to throw out that maybe we keep thinking about the format, and I guess, this will all depend on what happens tomorrow morning. And I just also want to reiterate again, I know this was not at all the intent in the suggestion. I know the suggestion had the best intentions. But I get, what was saying earlier about like, why are we really going to try and educate people in like an hour on this like fundamental life affirming decision? I don't know. Maybe we're not. Or like, there's people that it goes against their religious beliefs. Are we really going to undo someone's lifelong religious education in an hour? Probably not. But like I said, not doing it doesn't feel right either, you know? So I don't know. I'm just flagging what I see as a potential issue. Another potential issue, which I'm sorry to like say again, the baby girls come at any time, so I'm gonna be pretty locked down. I would really feel badly about foisting this on Roberto, our new vice chair. I can try and be involved. Also, you know, it seems like the stars always align in moments like this. Like I'm exceptionally busy with my caseload right now. So maybe that makes a partnership more feasible, a better idea, notwithstanding that it could at least put some of the crosshairs off just our board to the extent that's a concern. But I guess all this to say it's a meaty issue. It's when I saw CEC2 do, and I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
But I guess all I'm saying is we'll see what Monday comes. I feel like I'll probably call you Sandy. If that's all right, and we can.
Yeah, Jesus has his hand raised, so.
Sort of in line with what Jason was suggesting about whether speakers are actually necessary, given how topical the issue is and how much ink has been spilled over it, perhaps members of the committee can be tasked with researching, you know, the various sides and coming, you know, reporting to the committee, okay, these are the top 5 things that one side says, these are the top 5 things the other side says, and they could have a discussion. I'm always gonna come at this from a sort of operational point of view and try to see what would be the smoothest. Speakers would introduce, especially on this topic, would introduce complications that we may or may not be wanting to take on. Additionally, I'm also reminded of an issue, a resolution this board passed on a slightly different issue, but sort of in the same vein, on Drag Queen Story Hour. It was passed, but then after it was passed, it was never mentioned ever again. And, you know, unless the board is really has some sort of specific, district-specific aim to accomplish here, or we expect that we're going to be asked about this repeatedly, once we pass it and then we just move on, what was the point of all of that?
Well, oops, so, a question, or, oh, I'm sorry, go. I'm sorry.
No, you go first.
No, you had me, I'm sorry.
I had actually just a different perspective from John. I was gonna suggest that the objective is not necessarily to change hearts or minds, but rather this is the most local form of government. And we actually have a pretty free society. You can say whatever you want. It's an opportunity to come hear how others outside of your circle think. I might not have the same thoughts as all of you or some of you on the issue. So even if the point is not to have the board on record having voted on something, let's use this opportunity to talk about it. Pretty sensitive issue, because we know it's important, not because our opinion is gonna change the laws. That's my perspective.
My understanding would be that CEC is advisory, right? So they would go to the chancellor, I believe, or DOE, and that was their vote. So we're an advisory board as well. Couldn't we just have a vote of the board instead of, you know, putting things out to the public? But we could take a position as a board, as we're advisory, and we could also give our position to the chancellor as well, based on how we see the issue.
Possible, but I think we are a community board, so we want to have input from our community. I mean, I think it's better if we can do that. Screw it.
I feel that when I speak this way, I sound like an optimist and somebody who has faith in human nature. And I don't want to be misunderstood, but I think there's a value in having a conversation if you can get people who say, I'm confused about this and I do want to hear and sympathize with the other side, even if I disagree with them. So I think the community board has a place, not just in voting, but simply as being a forum. You know, assuming that it can be a calm and mature.
So I think if we can do something with our other community boards, that would be good. And then we can always decide about if we come up with a resolution, but let's try and find out what time frame is, so we have more time or less time. Okay, let's let's move on. Anything else at Borough Board we want to discuss? Or tomorrow we want to bring up? I did bring up our resolution on public asking for community board space and any new citywide work that's going on in their district. They put it in the minutes. They didn't put in the minutes my request to have the people look at the Alex Boras's bill, but I'll bring it up again. Okay, district manager's report.
I'll leave my report today. I know we have a lot to get to, so I'll leave it.
Okay. All right, transportation is first up.
I can pull it up. I could script while, first thing we have on is, DOT, coming in to talk about, bike lane through the First Avenue Tunnel, at 42nd Street, 40th and 49th Street. We'll put a bike lane there. I have no idea what they're about to propose, but I'm very excited about it, and, I think it's gonna be great.
You know, it's crazy loud in there.
Is it?
Oh, have you ever ridden that?
I have, but only when it's like, there have not been cars in there as well.
It's terrible. It's just terrible.
Okay, well, we'll see, I'm interested.
I mean, you know, yeah. For the spandex people, it's probably good.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I have concerns with the safety of the existing design, particularly in how, when you go above the tunnel, in the bike path, we don't have to get into this.
Yeah, no.
Okay, anyway, okay, so we have that going on, then, we have a co-naming, discussion on Stephen, Sadheim. We also have another one that we pushed into next month's agenda, so street co-namings are currently the thing right now. And then, we're working on budget requests, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, any other transportation issues, anybody? Okay, environment and parks. Old name.
Yes. Although someone in the, on Sunday came up to me and said, so you guys have a new name? So I don't know if it's already up on the website.
No, it's not until.
She must have insider information.
Impressions.
Yeah, so we will have the presentation, on the POPs. And then we will have the report from, Parks Department and Chair's report, old and new business. Chair's report, it shouldn't be too much, but if you remember, the issue we had with the bike lane, near the water club, which was flooding.
Oh, yeah.
And we had, no, we got it done. DOT actually went in and removed the water. The exact, everything behind it, I don't know, because I was running to get my son. This was Saturday for Earth Day. So I had to get my son and then go hang out with you for a couple hours. And so, I didn't really see, but when I came back, it was gone.
And what about, the group that got the award for landmarks? I forget the name of her. Is she going to present at your committee at some point? I passed along the information. She's, they identified 6 Jesus. Do you remember this?
Right.
Put it in the blast.
Blast, yeah.
Yeah. So
Because it's a
we have
landmark.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's something that we can look into.
I think they'd be happy to come and give a brief description of what they did.
And we also was speaking with Parks on Saturday. We also made some connections with individuals with the Monuments Department at
Oh, okay.
Parks.
Great.
So that's something as well. It's a possibility.
Okay. Health and Human Services.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we only have one agenda topic, and depending upon if we can get a speaker. But other than that, we don't have any. My question is, since now the environmental is going to be added to us, are we gonna have more members?
This brings up, first week in May, we will have 12 new members for the board, 12. So, and it'll take a little while for them to be assigned, but It was definitely, so there was actually, there was a bill about packaging that came up that I could transfer the information to you because it's definitely an environment / sanitation issue that might be interesting for your committee. So I think Neil had, do you have?
I
anything?
can forward some information, and it would be really good to connect with Ann
Yeah.
on this. She's been following this issue.
So just as, we'll keep that in mind,
Packaging for.
reducing packaging,
Oh,
yeah. Okay, budget and government affairs. Nad wasn't able to make it and said he'd connect up later. Anybody else have any? I know there's been a lot of discussion about budget issues and asking everybody to put it on their agenda, so. It seems like there's been some good discussions and great. Land use and waterfront.
All right, so we have a couple of items, continuing discussion about City of Yes for housing opportunity. This time DCB is coming to present to us. Now that they have a lot more details to share. We are likely gonna have to vote on that then to refer it to housing and homelessness, to do like we just did, for them to vote on it as well before it goes for full board for June 12th. We have the final presentation again on POPs from the fellow Missy Quick, and that is it for us.
Okay, public safety.
So I was talking with Matt about the possibility of inviting the National Retail Federation to speak with us. They have an annual survey of retail crime. They had a report, I think last year, extensively on organized retail crime, shoplifting and others. The report anyway doesn't make recommendations, but there is, I think, a lot to glean from it. And I think if we invite them and possibly some of the bids and maybe the local police commanders, we could have a conversation going. You know, there's the theory that these folk are already aware of what they're doing, but I think in life we discover that a lot of conversations we think are happening are not. So I think we are of value there. You know, we're talking about that, and we don't know if that the NRF would come either. Yes, look, National Retail Association or Foundation, I'll get that right. And the other thing, I think you guys discussed already was just sidewalk trip hazards. And this is one of those, do we go with the department or we go with the subject matter? I know that it's a subject that I care about, and I know that Brendan has been a little bit riled up because the Department of Transportation has the authority to, after issuing a notice of violation, to actually affect the repair if the property owner doesn't. But they generally don't do that. And I know it's fairly easy to trivialize this sort of thing, just like you can trivialize people slipping in the bathtub, but people can get really injured. And here we've got something where the problem is probably just a small budget issue. DOT probably doesn't have the budget to set the money out, pay the money up front to make the repairs done, because they then have to wait for the Department of Finance to collect the repair costs plus 10% for administration fees, so they get everything back. So I think once you start rolling this, if we can put it in a budget once, get DOT to actually do this, then it's sort of self-perpetuating. So those are the two completely different subjects.
And David Lowenstein is our, he represents CB6 on most of the bids, so he'd be someone to reach out to. I think he already has connections with them, so he could help you make sure they attend.
Okay, so there's no agenda here because Public Safety Committee still meets tomorrow. So the office typically tends to wait until they've had their meeting and then reaches out to them. So soon after your meeting tomorrow, Brendan will reach out to you asking for a finalized version of what your May agenda will be.
So that will bring up this other topic of should we change the scheduling so that when we come to the executive meeting and talk about the next meeting, it's the next meeting and not the next month's meeting.
Yeah, well, I mean, land use typically had the same problem, so. If, it's never hurts to have the next meeting, because you have to get people to come, et cetera. If you can at least put something together, it'd be helpful. I think, doesn't hurt to have it. Okay. Housing and homelessness.
Yes, so we will have two resolution items to discuss. One is, we had a presentation on the Community Land Act, which is a package of bills to encourage development of housing by nonprofits. They have asked us for a resolution in support, which is something that we'll probably prepare and discuss. And then the second item is Councilmember Rivera's bill that would require NYCHA to report on vacant units, which is a issue that's a holdover from last year. Then we will talk about whatever the final housing deal is in the state budget. We will resolve our budget request, and then we'll probably waive my chair's report. Something we will need to add is probably as our number one is discussion of a resolution on city PS housing. If Jen comes up with one a week before that.
Yeah.
Hopefully when, yeah.
So if, assuming DCP sticks on their schedule and certifies when they think they're gonna certify, it'll hit land use first, and then a week later, it'll go to your.
You'll give us something to vote on.
So you'll want that in addition to all of this.
Yes, and this thing we're discussing now should be first, because it's the highest priority. If Community Land Act falls off, it's okay. So I would do City PS first, intro 111 second, and Community Land Act third.
Is someone coming to talk about the community land?
No, they came last.
Oh, they came, I
and asked
suppose,
us.
continued.
By last month, I mean 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So you'd like us to add that,
Please.
now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can use whatever language he used. Yeah. So ours won't be the public hearing, it'll just be a discussion. And I will make sure the housing community knows that the public hearing is happening on 14th.
Perfect.
Okay. Youth and education.
Alrighty, notwithstanding any exciting developments on trans rights, we're going to present a draft resolution about how New York City has been implementing the 60-day rule. Sorry if you can hear my very anxious cat in the background. We are, for number 2, we're working on locking down a speaker with the Department of Health. I think it's actually going to happen based on the conversations with Robin. She's been very helpful. And other than that, it kind of, will just come down to budget requests. The only thing I could envision in the chair's report was just introducing Roberto as the new vice chair. I had a call with him. He's fantastic. And I'm really excited.
Okay, thank you. Business affairs and licensing. Yeah,
That agenda is not ready yet. The one for tomorrow, I can fill it up if you want, but no one from Bulk is here.
Yeah. Okay.
So should I fill it up or should we move on?
Yeah, we probably don't need to see it. One thing I noticed, other community boards tend to put up the establishments who have asked for an extension but did not come to the board. So we're kind of, I believe we have the same system, like we don't see everybody who asks for an extension of permissions. Yeah. So I
Unless they
don't,
have a problem.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But they seem to publish that. I wonder if that's something we wanted to do. Just so people know.
We just haven't done it because we decided years ago there were too many of them. Nobody seemed to care about it.
They've never done it in the 200 years that I've been here.
201 years ago we did, but I mean, we
Yes.
dropped it.
Yeah.
because it was-
They haven't. If the board really wants us to, we can sort of.
How many do you get each month?
A few dozen,
Yeah.
2 or 3 dozen, depends. But it's not like scores and scores and scores. But
Other boards have like
yes, yeah.
a lot, but we had a lot. I mean, for years we seemed to have a lot, and then that's why I think we did it.
And I don't know if it's something that public is interested in, like if the license is coming up, they might.
They've never asked, so no one has ever expressed an interest. What seems to happen is that whenever the agenda for the upcoming meeting is posted, and someone may happen to see an establishment that they seem to have a quibble with, then they'll come. The problem is, what the public doesn't know is that at that point, it pretty much is too late. And it's sort of, they should have been reaching out to us before then. It doesn't mean they can't start then, but if their thinking is that they're going to come to the committee and with their testimony alone, even if the board does say, you know what, well, we oppose this renewal, it is almost certain that it will be rubber stamped at the SLA if the allegations are serious enough. An investigation can be opened subsequently, but the SLA will not refuse an applicant based on just the community board's word alone. They will have to have done an investigation, which takes time.
Okay.
Yeah, on that subject, I mean, the question would be, what is the purpose of doing? Is it just to let the community know, or is it to invite input from the community? If it's to invite input from the community, it has to be within that, what is it, 60-day window, 30 or 60-day window.
No, the minute it comes, the minute we get their 30-day notice for renewal, at that point, it is too late.
It's too late.
It's too late.
So the purpose of announcing it is just to let the public know it's come through. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to be clear about what the purpose was.
Okay. So we have another item to discuss, so that's it for agendas. So new business, John?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, and I have a thing here that I prepared actually, which we don't have to discuss in full detail tonight, but I'd like feedback from people on a mentoring process that we, as Sandy pointed out earlier, sorry. And this will be distributed as well. So we're just gonna
Public delivery.
Yeah. So, we're gonna have 12 new members come onto the board. Yeah, my type font wanted to keep it on one page. And that's 25% of the board is gonna be new. And so simply, I wanted to talk about a process to integrate them as effectively as possible into the work and community that we are. Engage current members to the extent that they have the time and inclination, remembering that we're all volunteers, in the integration of new members. And provide the opportunities for new members to meet with one another and current or former board members in structured but mainly informal settings. Then finally, match new members who express a desire to be mentored with mentors. And provide new members with basic training, and there's a difference, and we had a good conversation with Stephen O about this. He pointed out the difference between mentoring and training. These are two different things. And I think of mentoring as a process. And it's a process of bringing people into the board, getting them engaged, and finding out what they're passionate about. I mean, everybody who comes to the board has an interest, of some sort. For me, it was education. For other people, it's health, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the objectives of it. And I appreciate feedback either tonight or in the next week on, I've identified a bunch of initial tasks where we would speak individually with each member, ideally before the June full board meeting. Ask if they would like to be assigned a mentor. I mean, someone has to want a mentor to be mentored. And if they want that, we would then try to match new members with committees that fit their top priorities and interests by the June full board, at least for their top for their top priority, what they're most interested in. And also then provide new members with opportunities to expand their horizons by June full board or over the summer, so a second committee. And then there would be a process here, and Mark and Sandy and I had discussed this, where we would be moving probably some people around based on the new members who come in, and we're looking for vice chairs for some committees such as health and environment. And this would be an opportunity to look at that and think about it. And so then we need to identify people on the board who are interested in mentoring a new member. I mean, we had a show of hands at a recent meeting. But let's make that a process where we actually ask privately people whether they're interested in mentoring. And identify, other than chairs and vice chairs, identify other experienced members of the board who are interested in mentoring a new member with whom they share a common interest, and match people up. And ideally, we try to do an initial match by the June full board meeting, but most likely, practically speaking, by the end of June. And technically, according to bylaws, I'm responsible for that, but this is something I know that Sandy and I and Mark and others are very interested in and have talked about. So I invite a robust engagement as we move ahead with this. And then I have some ideas on specific mechanisms for doing this. I think that there's a training side with an introduction to board basics. You know, what are these committees? What do they do? What are the bylaws? You know, and I was envisioning that as an informal meeting here with the board office, with the bylaws folks who are very familiar with bylaws, and a lot of time went into the bylaws over the last year. And there's a lot of things in the bylaws, as we observed this year in a couple of rezos, that people should know about, that they can and can't do, you know. And the board office, the division, the borough president's office does a good job of putting those things on the table. But I think it would be useful to have just a discussion where we say, you know, hey, you can do this, you can't do that, and these are our procedures. And then I had the idea that's, only thing that's new here in this part of it is, I had this vision of getting the new members together here, you know, for pizza or something, with all the former. I discussed this with Mark, and I'm sure Marty and Kyle and Sandra would be interested as well. Get the former board chairs in and other prominent people of the board and have a meeting. Just get the, I'll spring for the pizza. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know what the budget is, but we can figure that out and have a chance for, this is what we've done. You know, I mean, when I joined the board, I was so busy that I didn't, you know, I just figured, okay, I'll figure it out as I'm going along. And I'm not sure it worked out okay for me, but I had a lot of experience in other public things in New York. And if someone doesn't, I think, you know, I think having some sort of a formal, hey, this is how we do things. This is what Mark did when he was chair 201 years ago. And Marty did 210 years ago. And Jesus did it, you know, right after the Revolutionary War. And so these are the ideas I'm having. It's more of a process. When I worked at Bain and Company, and Bill Bain decided at one point, you know, I want everybody to have a mentor, and he made it part of the, you know, the compensation. And when people are getting 6 and 7 figure bonuses, they took it very seriously. It was 10% of their bonus. Now, this is not what we're doing. Okay, first of all, Sandy can't give us all a raise. And, you know, yeah,
Zero. We have already 20% of zero is still zero.
So anyway, it's just that I think, so it has to be a process more than a program, because a program is corporate and this is not a corporate type thing. On the other hand, you know, I think we lost something, and Anne made me aware of this at one of our first meetings when we got back in person, that, you know, we really did lose something when we stopped meeting in person all the time. Now, I happen to like on a snowy, rainy night being able to come out to a meeting, and I hope we keep that option. But, you know, on the other hand, we did lose something, and the more engagement we can have with people, especially new people, and ask that's part of the feedback on this. I would ask the new members of the board, you know, who from last year, to sort of give me feedback on what worked and didn't work. So those are my ideas. Technically, the buck stops here, so I would be you know, I think of myself as sort of like the switchboard, the telephone switchboard connecting people. But it only works if all the committee chairs, vice chairs, other board officers are engaged. And that's as quickly as I could do that. And so I invite, either comments tonight, or, but if people want to get out and home, I understand that. But also, I would really invite you all know how to reach me, contact and discussion of this, so I'll shut up.
Well, one thing, Letty has offered, that we redo our Manhattan Hinge, get together, which was July 12th at Sutton Place. So that's something we did last year and it was very successful. Lots of people came. So we'll, that's the
We could
first,
work that in,
yeah, one of the first things. Yeah, any,
I mean, that's a lot to absorb, think about, I know, so I'm asking people to reflect.
You know, I was gonna say, this is, amazing build out of a mentorship program, so you can sign me up for that, I'll definitely, participate and support whatever way that I can. I think the hard thing with any of these type of things is, again, like, as we're volunteers, is how do we maintain the consistency? And I'm like Stu, like what your comment before, it's like, I love to believe in be an optimist and all this stuff too, but I think if there's some way to like build it into our responsibilities, I know we're struggling even with like minutes right now.
Yeah.
To kind of build it in as a cultural sort of like mandate, as like part of your responsibility as a community board member is to share that, what we hear, institutional knowledge, but institutional knowledge that never gets shared with anybody else, and to say, hey, we have to do mentorship. And one of the things that we tried to do a couple of years ago when we tried to do this and no one wanted to do it, is also to have like geographic diversity with the mentorship, because I think there's a lot of north end and south end of the district that a lot of people don't know what's going on in each other's micro communities. But to add that as well, and however I can support, more than happy to do that.
Yeah, and I was careful, thank you, first of all, I was careful how I worded this because I'm looking around at, you know, our committee chairs, and I know how busy you folks are, you know, Rich and Micah, and, I mean, I understand that, so I'm reluctant to make it sort of a formal thing. On the other hand, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, we actually did this in a way, like historically, but it was sort of a little bit formal, but not really, and then semi-formal, and people did it. People who wanted to take part and did it, but it's great to have a structure here, like, let's do it, but then making it really happen. But I think if we make an effort for it, and enough of us do it, it sticks for enough people. Everyone's not gonna take part in this.
Right.
Because not everyone has the time or the desire to do it, but if people, enough do, great.
Yeah,
And
and
before
I would
COVID, we
just
had
do it
it.
as little
lost
victories,
it.
little steps
Yeah.
that we would
Yeah.
take, you know, like
Yeah.
July 12th.
Yeah.
As an
Yeah.
example.
B has her hand
B,
raised.
sorry.
Yeah. Oh, me,
Speak up, B, speak up.
Speak up. So let me just say, John and I have spoken. I really believe a mentorship program is very significant. And I hope, John, you're gonna send the electronically what you just distributed so we can look at, so those of us here can look at it. But one of the things, and I don't know if you have it in your memo, because we were on Zoom for 2 years and we didn't have interaction, and some of us can't have interaction, I thought that we lost a tremendous amount with new members. A lot of us didn't know the backgrounds of the new members, really didn't have an opportunity. So I think even when, Sandy, new members are appointed to the board, we need to take time at a meeting to introduce them, not just their names, but to have them say a little something about themselves, because then we can determine, you know, the interests and stuff that we might have and the teaming. So I found that really as a void. I got to know some of the new members when they were on the bylaw committees or something else, but I didn't have any idea of the 10 new members that came on the board and what their backgrounds were, and we never had an opportunity to speak. So I think there's a lot that we need to do, not just with members on the board, but the new members themselves in integrating in.
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
terrific,
that's.
yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because I think it also gives the people like Sandy or chair and vice chairs and people who are actually like in leadership positions get to know the members well enough to know what their interests are, so you can assign appropriate committees. Now, it could be just that we have a conversation and you think I may be really, really good at a certain topic or a certain area, but it may not be my interest. So putting me on that committee, it's really gonna be counterproductive. So that's where that really whole thing comes in, right? Like, that's where the whole like, okay, yes, you could be potentially good at it, but is this really something you care? Like, is this really something that's really a good use of?
In your free time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I think
Yeah.
that's where this whole process is really gonna, I think, play well, is to really match the new members in their interest areas and the committees that they actually wanna work on.
And
And-
excuse me, sorry.
I was gonna say, I mean, Kyle has gone through this the most recently of trying to slot 10 new members into the board where it's difficult, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we did, and when everyone knows this too, is like, we kind of like redid our orientation of like, just sort of like a one-on-one, which, obviously you guys can read that going forward, but to have those one-on-one conversations, and then also like, there's the expectation of like, everyone's always interested in land use. You can't have a 50-member committee, and so really, like, in my personal experience of like being on business affairs, I had zero interest in business affairs until someone put me on business affairs. And I actually really ended up enjoying it, right? So having that balance, and that's part of our culture.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, obviously you're here for certain business areas, but there might be things that you're not aware of that you could be interested in.
And,
So,
we sort of for our own benefit, want to take advantage of what skills people
Yeah.
have. So there's always balance. But yes, hopefully people get onto a committee that they're engaged with.
Or else at least they learn about the committee and say, I really don't want to
Wanna
do
be
that. That
on
one, I don't know, but I'll try it.
Yeah,
That'll
Well,
actually
yeah,
happen
that's
too a
what
lot.
the last few years, like I actually didn't assign people until they actually attended all of the meetings. So even when they were first assigned, it was like, go watch on YouTube all of the different committees. And then, it was like something that was at the beginning of August or something, that was like, send me your top 5 choices
Yeah.
based on meetings, and some people's would change from the initial conversations after actually
Yeah.
seeing the meeting, so.
And I have to plead guilty on that because a member of the board recently said to me in a conversation that I attended one of your education committee meetings when you ran it, and I decided it was far too arcane and far too. And I viewed that as a fail for myself,
Well,
so.
for that person, but not for somebody else.
Yeah, but so it's a good point to give people a chance to.
Yeah,
to
I
find
didn't
out.
want to be on parks when I would first run the board, and the chair at the time said, well, I'll put you on land use because you're a land use person, but you gotta go on parks too. And I was like, okay,
That's how Rick put me on,
Yeah.
Bog, right?
And-
Boston.
but now, I mean, parks, land, I mean, I love it, it's like.
I love
Yeah.
Bog. My favorite committee.
Yeah.
John, I'm sorry to say that Bog is my favorite committee, so that's.
So let's, any comment on meeting minutes?
Can I just say,
Oh,
is there
sorry,
a
go ahead,
general
John.
consensus on moving ahead like this? I'm not asking everyone to agree with everything, because I put this together just for today, but do we have a general consensus to move ahead with
Oh,
this? And I invite lots of people.
Present this at full board.
Yeah, but I want to get feedback before full board so that I can.
Can make it meaningful, right? Okay,
So action items on this thing, does the office have to do anything?
I would
in
say
the immediate-
these requests that it be sent out to, what I sent you today, go out to everyone. And if
Do we
it's-
need to cover an intro on it, though, right, or something that says, here's what this is
well,
about?
so
Okay,
far
I
it's just
can-
going to
Oh,
to
just that.
John
Oh, okay.
and to B, who were not
Okay,
able to attend, and then for
Yeah.
full board, should we send it out ahead of time?
I think we should send it out ahead of time, maybe with a cover.
yeah, something to
okay,
say,
This
we're
was
gonna talk
discussed at
about it.
exec.
Yeah.
So we
I'll
have-
review it with Sandy and Mark and make sure that, and anyone
Out of the
else.
blue document, like what?
You
Yeah.
know, that's
Oh,
right.
no.
And,
So for now, I'll send it to B.
well, send it to
I-
anybody,
Yeah.
yeah, send it to anyone who's a member of exec who is not here
Okay.
physically.
Yeah.
And we'll send it to all.
I'll send it to all the members
That's
of
the
the
thing. Make sure you have a
Yes,
distribution.
yes,
Okay, and then somebody will give me
The
some.
three of us will talk and
And
then,
then we will talk.
Okay, and we'll send you a
Good
cover
job
letter to
on
go
that.
for the whole board.
So,
And any comments on minutes, we're going to ask
thank you,
people,
excuse me.
we'll set this as a new, I guess, so the action item is to put this on the website now as our, unless we have any feedback, hopefully everybody's had time to look at it.
I just have one question. Can you format it a little differently so it's easier to,
Format what?
this?
Oh, I didn't think this.
Yeah, but-
So we would need, what we need in Word.
I'm still gonna blame you.
Yeah, it's your job, yeah.
But, how would you like it formatted?
I don't know, I looked at it and thought, I mean, for me, it was fine, but I just think, is everyone gonna? I don't know, I'm not sure. It should be a form, or is it a fill-in form kind of thing, or how are we gonna do it?
Well, more than likely what we're gonna have is a Word version of it, and then people can just
Yeah, it is.
type over
Oh, okay.
what that is. That's what exists now. I mean, I looked at it and it seemed fine to me, but if there are changes, maybe in this first few months of being out in the wild, you
Yeah.
can, people can.
I mean, maybe just guidance is a different thought, so people don't just copy that into the minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
I mean, you know, no, I'm not gonna say.
So just to be clear, for the minutes, because there's no vote or anything on this, exec has mandated that this will be the new template. And that everyone who writes minutes for this board, for any of our meetings, will use this. So we will need all of you to beat this drum in your various committees and with your various members. So I feel anything the office said at this point is falling on deaf ears, so.
When are we gonna roll this out?
right now, and.
Redo everything I just did right now, yeah.
No, it's okay. You asked ahead of time, you could use it, absolutely, it's fine to use the old template. No problem.
So why don't we do this? We'll put this on the website by the end of the week. There are no meetings on Fridays anyway. And then every meeting that happens after, but it seems like unless you send
Public
everyone.
safety is tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, so then they won't be.
Why don't we do it after full board, because we'll announce it at full board, and from
Yeah.
that point on, everybody. Yeah, Stu,
So,
do you have?
so you may have discussed this already, but, the critical question is, will the minutes be prepared before full board?
That's came out as definitely, we'll add that to please prepare them. And that's, again, it's sort of up to the chairs to make sure that, you know, it's obviously difficult sometimes if your meeting's the day before or the week.
Yeah.
3 days before. So. Okay. Any other old or new business?
Raj, last day is May 9th.
We have several people who are leaving, Claire, Raj, Matt, who else is? Who else might be? Abby.
Yeah.
Are any of them, like Raj, staying on as public members on committees?
Not that I know of.
He said that he might.
I think
We
he-
asked him.
It's a lot of
He's done a
institutional-
lot.
Yeah, he's.
He's done a lot. for
And-
CDC.
That's a lot of institutional knowledge. going into the- oh, wow.
Gotta pass that open meetings law.
Can't we just decline their resignations?
Of course,
Never got it, yeah.
it's the girl president that does that. So, but we should do something,
Mhm.
so. I don't know what that something is, taking suggestions, but at the next board meeting, I guess it's.
Well, we're doing something for May 9 for him in our.
At your health end.
Yeah.
Does the board, I just tell them I paid attention to this, does the, I know the borough president does citations for people who've done excellent service, but can the board, can we put something together at the next meeting acknowledging this, or? I mean,
Well,
I guess
we've
I'm
done
fundraising.
that. We've done that before. If you're not client, we've done that before.
Before the pandemic, we had certificates and we had, nice folders with
Yeah.
the city seal printed on them, the same ones that the mayor's office used. And we even had, before the pandemic, we would give departing members a little city seal pin.
Yeah.
That they could, would put it on their lapel and stuff, but all that stuff stopped when the pandemic happened, so, but we still have them.
So let's reinstitute, let's do that, because I think it's, I mean, these.
It's a lot of
people that-
time, everyone put a lot of time.
Time,
into
yeah.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Are they coming? Sometimes,
Yeah, we
some of these folks I haven't
have-
seen. in a while.
Oh, no, Raj comes.
Raj comes, maybe, well, he's been zooming, but, Matt comes.
So, I mean, if they will be there in person, at full board, we're happy to do, certificates for them. If you wanna do a little pin thing, we can get you the pin, we still have some,
Okay.
but, we don't wanna be making certificates for people who aren't gonna show up.
We could mail it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk and see if we can,
Yeah,
this is why somebody can get to each person,
yeah.
make sure they.
Okay, well, we'll try and do that.
So you want certificates for everyone who's departing,
Yes,
for full board?
for full board, I think so.
And I guess you guys can work on trying to get them to come.
Oh, don't worry. We know where they live, right?
Okay, great. Well, Thank you. If that's it, I think I have to say something. If there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting.